Hiya, I've got another lesson for you. It's that time of year when most of us probably have been thinking about setting goals and getting motivated, getting healthy, and just getting our lives moving in a more positive direction. So then I thought, well, let's see if we can write something about this and talk to you about this. Thought I'd just throw together this little thing about goals and goal setting. What are goals? Why would you want to set a goal? Well, generally, goals can give you motivation, they can give you direction, they can give you purpose. You'll get a huge sense of satisfaction when you've achieved the goal. It can give you drive, motivation, and really help you think much more clearly. So there's a number of benefits to setting goals. And I just sort of came up with a couple of points here. Pretty much all motivational gurus, think of anyone you can, Jim Rohn, Brian Tracy, Tony Robbins, all of them agree that goals should be written down to be most effective. Specificity is the key. So goals that are time-bound and measurable work the best. And people with written goals are 50% more likely to achieve than people who do not have goals. There was in theory, a 1953 Harvard and Yale study which was supposed to have studied a cohort of students. 3% of them had written down the goals, 97% of them didn't, and then they followed the students up 10 years later to see who'd achieved what, and of course the 3% who'd written the goals down had achieved more. Well, unfortunately that study didn't actually happen. There is actually a legitimate study. They divided their participants into 5 groups. So the first group were asked just to think about their goals. The second group were asked to write their goals down. The third group were asked to write their goals down and also some action steps. The fourth group wrote the goals down and the action steps and showed them to a friend. And the fifth group wrote their goals down with the action steps and showed them to a friend and sent a weekly report. And it was found that the participants who did, in group 5 essentially, who did everything, were the ones who achieved the most overall. And all groups that wrote down their goals achieved more than the group that were just asked to think about the goals. So there's definitely something in this goals writing down or being written down. And guess what I'm doing with this whole video series? The video series is getting ready for a photo shoot. So I've got 4 weeks to photo shoot. That's my goal. I want to look good for my photo shoot. Okay. So the goal is written down because it's all over social media. It's written down. All of these videos are forming the action steps. In fact, we just did that with the PN plate and the hand size portion guide. Those are the steps. Of course, you are my accountability friends, and I'm sending you a weekly report. I've just posted the weekly report. So I fit into group 5 of this study. So do you think I stand a good chance of achieving this goal? You better believe it. And you've probably come across a number of goal setting techniques. There's SMART, which could either be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant and time-based, or another interpretation of that is simple, meaningful, actionable, realistic and trackable. An example of a SMART goal might be, I want to lose 12 kilos by December the 31st, 2018 by eating healthy foods 80% of the time and exercising for 30 minutes a day. So that's a SMART goal. It's very specific. It's measurable, it's attainable, it's relevant, and it's time-based, okay? Now, I actually didn't set a specific goal for my photo shoot when I started talking all about this, so let's do one right now. A specific goal might be, by January the 26th, I want my obliques showing. I want to be lean enough so that my obliques are showing and my little wriggly vein in my shoulders is visible so that I look amazing at my photo shoot. Another one that is a very common one in NLP circles is called future visioning or strategic visioning. And it's where you actually sort of go inside yourself. Generally you do an exercise, and it's a closed eyes exercise where you imagine your future stretching out in front of you, and then you rise above this line, which is your future line, your timeline. Okay, you rise above it, and then you float out to some point in the future, a specific date in the future, and then you drop yourself down into that specific date in the future, and you look around you and see that you've achieved your goal, whatever it is. So it might be Your goal might be, as we did in the SMART one, I want to lose 12 kilograms by December the 31st, 2018 by eating healthy foods 80% of the time and exercising for 30 minutes a day. So then you close your eyes, imagine your timeline in front of you, you rise above the timeline, float all the way forward to December the 31st, 2018, drop yourself down into it and see yourself being 12 kilos lighter. You imagine yourself, you feel everything that you feel, you feel the feelings, see everything around it, and imagine, you are there and you see yourself 12 kilograms lighter. What clothes are you wearing? You're probably going shopping in the sales for all these amazing new clothes. You're having fun for the first time in ages doing the shopping because you can just go and pick up the clothes off the rack, which you haven't been able to do for years. You imagine how you feel, how proud you feel, and you can see yourself walking down the street and love looking at yourself in the windows or in the mirror. What this does is it locks it into your physiology. It tells your unconscious mind. So your SMART goals work on your conscious mind, but this future visioning actually works on your unconscious mind. So this is more sort of intuitive. It's along the lines of this is how The Secret works, and it basically locks it into your subconscious what you want, and then essentially once you've done that, your body will figure out how you get there. Okay. Now, the trouble with goals, and as you're probably well aware, you may have set goals yourself and not achieved them. And this actually happens to quite a lot of people, and a lot of people actually don't achieve their goals. And as I alluded to before, actually only 3% of adults do write their goals down. And with New Year's resolutions particularly, 41% of people who regularly set New Year's resolutions, 32% of New Year's resolutions generally are weight related, which is a massive amount. And then depending on which Google page you look at or which statistics you're looking at, it could be 92% of them fail by January the 15th, or 80% of them fail by February, 92% of them fail within the first 6 months, all sorts of stats. But the upshot of this is actually only about 8% of people who set a New Year's resolution will achieve it, which is quite phenomenal. That's a huge failure rate, and it's very sad. So what sort of factors play into whether you will achieve a goal or not? And I believe it comes down to two things, really. There's the unknown and motivation. Now, with the unknown, let's just say, for example, if you're somebody who's always been overweight your whole life, you might have been overweight as a kid, overweight at school, overweight at university, you've probably never known what it's like to lose. Let's say your goal is to lose 15 kilograms. Well, how can you possibly imagine that? You don't know what you look like 15 kilos lighter. So it's very difficult to put it as yes, you can put it into your SMART goal, but is it attainable for you? You don't know, because you've never lost 15 kilos before. So you don't know if that's a realistic, attainable target for you. And if you would try to do the future visioning thing, could you imagine yourself 15 kilos lighter? Why did you pick 15 kilos? How do you know what you're going to look like? You just don't know these numbers. It's the same thing and this is actually why you shouldn't pick a number on a scale. Let's just say I want to weigh 53 kilos. I actually happen to know exactly what I look like when I'm going to be 53 kilos. But if you've been overweight your whole life, do you know what you look like when you were 53 kilos? I bet you don't. Setting a goal based on an arbitrary number is actually probably not necessarily a good thing, because you just can't imagine it. You've got nothing to relate it against. So I think that the unknown is probably a huge factor why people fail to achieve their goals, because they can't actually relate to it. Okay. Now, the second factor, I believe, is motivation. There are two types of motivation: external or away, and internal or towards. So what do I mean by away and towards? Well, external motivation, it might be to avoid an adverse outcome, for example. A teenager might do their homework just because they don't want to be grounded. That's away motivation. Or it might be to gain reward. An employee might put in some extra hours because they'll get a bit of bonus, or they'll get some overtime. That kind of motivation tends to be fairly temporary or fairly fleeting. Whereas internal motivation, and I believe this is actually a stronger one, and I'll give you some very good examples of all of these. Internal motivation or towards is something that comes from within you that draws you towards it. And it comes from, as it says here, a desire to participate or perform a function for its own sake. Okay, and I'll give you some very good examples of this. Now, this one here is an example of external motivation. It's moving away from something. Okay, you're doing something just to avoid an adverse outcome. And there's a very good quote here from Stephen Pressfield in The War of Art, which, by the way, is a very good book if you haven't read it. At some point, the pain of not doing something becomes greater than the pain of doing it. And here's a very good example. Don't want to be fat, don't want to be fat, don't want to be fat. Phew, not fat. So you stop doing what it was that you were moving away from because you didn't want to be fat. Okay, so you're moving away from an adverse outcome, which is fat. Okay, so when you get to that, when you've achieved that, then that motivation's gone. So you stop doing what it was that got you to not being fat, and all of a sudden you're back to being fat again. Oh, crap. Don't want to be fat, don't want to be fat, don't want to be fat. Phew, not fat. And you stop doing it again. And this is how this is typical of yo-yo dieters, and Oprah Winfrey is the absolute classic example of this. She's a classic yo-yo dieter. Don't want to be fat, don't want to be fat, don't want to be fat. Phew, not fat. And she stops doing it. All of a sudden, don't want to be fat, don't want to be. You can see how this is short-term and temporary, and it doesn't last, okay? And I'll give you another good example of what's turned out to be external motivation, and it's one of my examples again. When I got into the bodybuilding, a couple of days out from my first show, I called my parents and told them this, and their reaction was so shocking, upset me massively. I was in tears a couple of days out from my first show because they were so horrified that they actually ended up refusing to speak to me. So I was desperately upset. My next day at my training session, I told my trainer this, and I was in tears again because I was so upset that they basically said, "What do you want to do that for? I'm not going to speak to you," kind of thing. After I cleared up in a fit of pique, very childish, I suppose, in a way. In a fit of pique, I uttered the words, "Well, it serves them bloody well right if I become Miss Olympia," and something must have clicked, because that has actually, in a way, driven me for the last 6 years. And finally, this year, a couple of things happened. I guess there was a kind of "I'll show you" sort of attitude. I can be a bit reverse motivated sometimes. So part of me wanted to go, "Well, I'll show you." And then part of me went, "Well, I'll become Miss Olympia." And so two things have happened this year. So the first one of those is that I actually competed in England in front of my parents. For the first time, they said to my face, "We're really proud of you." And that represented such a massive turnaround in their own journey that, again, I was blown away by this. When I finished those shows and got back from England, for a couple of weeks, I was all over the place. I had no motivation because I guess I'd shown them and they'd said they were proud of me. So all of a sudden, there was no motivation to continue. Now, I did find some other motivation, which was that I wasn't Miss Olympia. So I carried on to Miss Olympia. I'm now Miss Olympia. And again, all of a sudden, I'm really struggling with my motivation. So not only have I become Miss Olympia, which was those fateful words that I uttered in a fit of pique, but I've also showed my parents, I've kind of proven to them, and they've said that they're proud of me. So all of a sudden, I have no motivation. Why would I want to carry on doing this? The motivation has gone. I don't need to do this anymore. So that's a really good example as well of external motivation. Whereas here, this is internal motivation. When I lost all my weight, my goal was not to lose weight. I never at any point set out to lose 25 kilos. I set out to get fit to climb a mountain in order to re-establish my identity as the fit person. I wanted to be this person here. This is who I was back in 2001 at 17,000 feet in the Himalayas. I was that fit person. This is who I wanted to be. I was having the time of my life here. I wanted that feeling back. I wanted the feeling of being that fit. That's what I wanted. And it was so strong, wanting to be this fit person again, because that's who I was. I'm the fit chick who climbs mountains. And if I'm not that, then what am I? I can't not be so it was totally internal. I needed to be this fit chick again at the top of a mountain. So So that is why it was so strong. It pulled me towards it. And I did everything in my power to be this. And because it was so strong and so internal, it's why it's kept going as well. I think the key difference between the external motivation and the internal motivation is that when you're internally motivated, there's actually a higher purpose. So if your goal actually is to lose a significant amount of weight, try and find something that's actually more internal rather than this arbitrary number on a scale. Find something that's internal. Find a higher purpose, because when you have that higher purpose, it'll draw you towards it. It's so enticing that you'll just constantly want to move towards it. And it could be anything. Like I say, for me, it was I needed to be the fit chick. It was my identity, and I didn't know who I was without that. It might be you want to be a role model for your kids. Might want to be the best mum or dad for your kids and set a great example for them. You might want to be healthy so that you're around for your kids as they grow up. Find a higher purpose, and it will always draw you towards it. And when you've got that higher purpose, I believe you will always achieve that goal. Okay, so that's your external motivation. This is your internal motivation. Now, when you've set a goal and you're highly motivated to do it, it can actually seem quite overwhelming. This is something you've not done before. So it can be very, very overwhelming. You go, how the hell am I going to achieve this goal? I love this quote here by Will Rogers. Even if you're on the right track, you'll get run over if you just sit there. And it reminds me of that joke, how do you eat an elephant? The answer, of course, is one bite at a time. So the key to achieving your goals is to chunk it down into bite-sized chunks. So how do you do that? Well, let's just say, for example, you've set a goal of losing 12 kilograms in 12 months. Okay? This is the journey you're going to take over the next 12 months. This is where you are today. This is where you want to be in 12 months' time, 12 kilos lighter. What does that mean? Well, to chunk it down, that means in 6 months I've got to lose 6 kilograms. In 3 months, or 12 weeks, roughly, I've got to lose 3 kilograms, which means in 6 weeks I've got to lose 1.5 kilograms, which means in 3 weeks I only have to lose 750 grams. Well, that's nothing. So do you see how by chunking it down, it's suddenly this big thing of 12 kilograms, which you might not even be able to picture in your head because it's so huge and you've never done it before, which might make it seem very, very overwhelming and all too hard, and you go, oh, well, what's the point? Well, all of a sudden, you've got it down into, 750 grams. That's nothing. My computer weighs more than 750 grams. So this is how you chunk it down. You break it into smaller and smaller and smaller chunks until it becomes something. Instead of being this mountain, it becomes just this little bump. Just a little bump. Well, I've just got to step over that. I can do that easy. Now, let's just look at that in terms of what it might mean in terms of food. For example, it just happens that for every gram of carbohydrates you eat, your body stores 3 grams of water. Okay? So in 1 week, I actually only have to lose 250 grams of water, really. And that only equates to 2 slices of toast, a banana, and a potato. Well, that's not very much, is it? So in theory, now this of course will not happen because of all sorts of other factors going on. But in theory, in a perfect world, if you just cut out 2 slices of toast, 1 banana, and 1 baked potato, you would lose 0.25 of a kilo. But like I say, that would be water weight. It wouldn't actually be fat. So you would have to do other things as well. But that doesn't seem like very much, does it really? That's not so hard. You could cut out 2 slices of toast, 1 baked potato, and you could do some moderate intense exercise for 60 minutes to achieve that same 1/4 of a kilo. Again, that's not excessive. And your 60 minutes of exercise, you could break that down anyway into, say, 4 lots of 15 minutes. Now, actually, if you did 15 minutes, a 15-minute brisk walk, and I do mean brisk, I mean not one of those walks where you see power walkers or Kath and Kim, just wriggling around like this. I mean actually raising your heart rate, getting a little bit out of puff. If you did a 15-minute walk after your lunch, that can actually really, really help your digestion and provide you energy throughout the afternoon so you don't get the afternoon slumps. I actually highly recommend a 15-minute walk after lunch anyway, if you possibly can, just because it's a nice thing to do. It's just nice to get out of the office, clear your head, have a little bit of space to think. It's just a nice habit to get into, okay? So, again, 1/4 of a kilo, cut out 2 slices of toast, baked potato, and walk the dog or be walked by the dog for 60 minutes a week. That's not excessive. And when you make it into these tiny little chunks that are very, very attainable, all of a sudden, this whole goal doesn't seem as huge. So then I related it back to the champion lifestyle. Now, as you know, I lost 25 kilos in 9 months just by applying healthy habits. I never set out to diet. I never went on a diet. I lost a bit more than a kilo a week because I was doing an awful lot of exercise. But these goals here, and you could apply every single one of these goals over the next 28 weeks, and I guarantee you would feel more energetic, you would feel healthier, you would feel better about yourself, you would lose some weight. I'm not going to say that you're going to lose 12 kilograms. You'd probably need to add in extra exercise for that. But if you applied every single one of these goals, you would achieve better health than you are in right now. And I can pretty much guarantee that. So let's have a look at these goals. Eat a protein-dense food at every meal. And the measure for that, remember, if we go back to the SMART goals, our measure is 80% consistency. Now remember, in the weekly check-in, I talked about being consistent. Do something towards your goal every single day. Doesn't matter how small, just keep going. Do something, do it again, and do it again until you get there. Okay? So this is it. Eat a protein-dense food at every meal. And when you can do it with 80% consistency for 2 weeks, then you move on to the next one. And this, do you see how these tiny little chunks, when you add them up together, become a big thing that has moved you from here, where you are now, which is presumably not where you want to be, because that's why you've made a goal to change your health, to over here, which is in a much healthier direction. Okay, and you will get results, I guarantee it. So, your first chunk, eat a protein-dense food at every meal. When you can do that for 2 weeks at 80% consistency, then you add in, you keep doing the first chunk, by the way. You don't drop the first chunk, you keep doing the first chunk. These have to build on top of each other, just like a ladder, just like taking a step. Then you eat fruit and vegetables with every meal. When you can do that with 80% consistency for 2 weeks, then you eat some carb-dense foods on most meals, but especially after exercise. Then you make sure that you're not overeating on grains and breads. You make sure you're eating on the healthy fats. You change your drinks to make sure they're non-calorie beverages. Then you make sure that you're doing whole, minimally processed food. So you can see how these goals, when you add these all up together, will not only move you in a healthy direction, but once you've played the Hunger Games, and I think I did allude to the Hunger Games, I will go to the Hunger Games in a lot more detail if I haven't, you will know your body inside out, upside down, and back to front. Okay, and that is a really good thing. So pause the video, write these down, and start implementing them. If you've got a health goal, doesn't matter what it is, how much weight you want to lose, if you've got a health goal, write these down and implement them with 80% consistency and only add them the next step when you can do the first or the previous step for 2 weeks. All right? So that's a very, very simple way of moving yourself in the right direction without getting overwhelmed. So what is success? Well, most people think success is like this. Well, actually, it's not. It's more like this. If you took a plane journey, when the plane sets off, it's on course. When it lands, it's obviously on course. But in between, it sort of wobbles around a bit all over the place. 90% of the time, it's actually off course. As long as it starts right and ends right, you've made your journey. It's the same thing with any of your goals. Yes, there's going to be humps and bumps along the road. As long as you do something every single day, you will get there in the end. And if you find that you don't hit the date, well, it doesn't matter. You've got somewhere towards that goal. Readjust the date. Make it more attainable for you. So let's just say the goal was to lose 12 kilos in 12 months. Let's just say we get to December the 31st and we've only lost 9 kilos. What are you going to do? Beat yourself up because you only lost 9 kilos? No. You've lost 9 kilos. That's fantastic. You've got some of the way there. So keep going. Don't give up. Keep going. Do you see what I mean? Goal setting should not be a black and white thing. Motivation is not a black and white thing. Ease up on yourself. Cut yourself some slack. Okay? This is reality. And as long as you keep doing something every single day, chunk by chunk, keep the chunks small and keep doing them, keep applying them, you will get there. Who else to leave you with than our good friend Yoda? Do or do not. There is no try. And that applies to any goal that you've set. I hope that was helpful and you've learned something, and I'll talk to you in the next video.